Hey guys, Scott here. Today I'm going to go over the confirmed changes to the Skull Merchant before she comes out. A lot of these, in fact, most of these were exactly from the leak, so there's not too much new stuff to talk about. But I will go over a couple things that have actually changed, and they're beneficial. They're good changes. And then there's a couple of perk changes that I found to be just very weird. But let's go over the Skull Merchant most importantly first, because I think she is unanimously seen as pretty disappointing. So what they're doing for the first part here is really good. They're removing the cooldown for placing the drones. That's really nice. It was such an unnecessary detriment to have that 12-second cooldown just for placing a drone, because you have the cooldown for activating your drones too. And the fact that there was multiples is, multiple delays is just really, really, it feels bad. I'm sorry about this cable, by the way. If I untangle it, my headset stops working. It's become its own eldritch abomination right now. I have to just appease it. So that's good. Removing that cooldown is really nice. And now there's only a cooldown for activating it, and they even lowered that by 2 seconds. So that's pretty much what the leak said, but I didn't know that they were removing the cooldown entirely, so that's really good. The whole making the drone activate in 3 seconds instead of 4 seconds doesn't do anything, because the correct play will always just be to leave immediately. You're going to be out of the range, whether it's 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 2 seconds. You're still going to be out of the range of the drone. Doesn't really matter. So that doesn't really do anything. Now, they've also made it so that the delay before it becomes lower on the ground and you can actually deactivate it is 10 seconds. This was also in the leaked content as well. So that, I said, would be one of the things that actually did have a marginal effect, because if you wanted to repair a generator in an active area, now you would have to actually eat a bit of the exposed timer before you could just walk up to it and just tap it. Or instead, you can just walk out of the range for 10 seconds and then walk back in. So it might give a little bit of game delay, or it might get more exposes from people just sitting there. Which is good. The problem is, if the expose happens 9 times out of 10, she can't really do anything to capitalize on the expose. But if people are scared of the expose and they back out of it, it might make newer players or less confident players do gens a bit slower. So I said in my last video about the leak changes that that's probably one of the few things that will have a tangible effect on how long games last with her. So that's good. I like that a lot. Now, standing inside the drone's radius gives you undetectable. Currently in 3 seconds, they're changing that to 2 seconds. I still think this is the wrong way to do it. So look, here's the whole problem with this killer. There's no risk reward really with her. They go over a risk reward scenario, but there really isn't any. If you get exposed by this killer, that's sort of just completely your fault. There's pretty much no scenario where this killer gets an expose on you where it's beneficial to the killer, as long as the survivors are playing remotely decently. Because what's going to happen, let's say she's trying to drop drones at loops and stuff like that. She'll drop a drone, you get, a second of expose or whatever, but then you just leave, because you're obviously not going to stay there and get exposed, because why would you do that? Now, if you're at like a god pallet or something, you're at Shack or something, maybe you'd stay. But in my opinion, even if you're at a god pallet and she drops a drone there, I still think the correct play is always to just simply leave the loop. If you just leave and she doesn't kick the pallet, now you have a good situation for later for you or for someone else, so that's still good for you. And if you leave and she hits you, okay, you're injured now, but now what? Now she has nothing. There's nothing she can do to you. There's no power anymore to down you. It's sort of like Legion, except she can't even use her power to catch up or anything like that. There's just nothing. And the whole reason there's no risk reward is because staying injured against a killer like Wraith or Myers or Ghostface is kind of scary, because they can sneak up on you without you having any warning and you just go down before you can possibly react. And that is what makes it scary, to stay injured against those types of stealth killers. But this is not really a stealth killer, because when she enters her active drone radius, then she becomes undetectable. So not only does she have to most likely reset the drone up, which is the first indicator that she might be coming back, she then has to walk next to you or next to the range of the drone, which means you're going to hear her terror radius. This is exactly what it's going to sound like if she approaches from a distance and then walks into drone's range. It's going to go like that. As soon as survivors get that in their head, she's going to have basically no stealth power anymore. It might take a week or two for the newer players to equate that in their head, but the fact that they're reducing the duration from 3 seconds to 2 seconds means it's going to be even more of an abrupt, unnatural drop-off. And that only happens with killers that have movement speed abilities, like Blight can instantly lose his radius by zooming across somewhere, or killers that have Insidious or something that makes you lose the tear radius faster than the killer could walk away and naturally remove their tear radius by no longer being nearby. So this 2-second drop off actually works as a detriment by giving you even more of a tell that she's now inside your area and you need to be very wary of her no longer having a tear radius. But she's not going to get the drop on you. Now you know she's there. I could see maybe if you're on like the game or Larry's or something, it could be good. But even then, you're still getting that warning where with like Wraith and Myers and all them, they're just going to be on you and probably hit you before you can do anything. And that's why staying injured against those killers is so scary. But against this killer, who cares? Now, what I suggested is you make survivors oblivious inside the range, like that add-on, and that would make it so they wouldn't be able to tell that she was starting to approach. And now there would be that whole risk reward scenario. It's such a simple fix that fixes so many problems with this killer because now you're taking a huge risk. If you can't hear her coming at all, well, now staying injured is not so safe. And now there's actually a bit of a downside to just leaving every time she drops a drone and taking the hit because who cares? Once you get exposed, or I'm sorry, once you prevent the expose and you're injured, she doesn't have anything on you anymore. So I think that's the crucial risk reward scenario that you need to have base kit on the killer for her to be successful. Without that, she can't benefit from survivors remaining injured, and she can't benefit from her expose because the expose will never happen in a situation that's beneficial for a survivor once a week or two has passed and people have learned the very basic counterplay to this killer. And that's my whole main problem with her fundamental design, and it's fixed just simply by making survivors oblivious instead of giving her undetectable. That's it. So all that changed. It doesn't really do anything. The lock-on duration being doubled, like I said, survivors are not ever going to be exposed in a situation in which it's detrimental to them because they have full control over when that happens. So that this could last 12 hours. It's not really going to matter because most likely survivors will be injured at that point, just negating the entire downside of it. Incomplete lock-on will start to decay after 10 seconds. This is also in the leak. What that does basically is make it so if she's trying to chain multiple drones together, it's a bit harder for you to lose that. But like I said, once it's about to get full, they're just going to stand still outside of the radius of a drone and force you to hit them, or just, it's not even like Ghostface. You can just pop the 99 really quick and actually down them. She can't do anything. So that's not really going to do much as well. Entering an active zone while lockdown will reset your lock-on to 60 seconds to prevent it from decaying until you leave the zone. This, I don't remember being in the leaks. There was something like this on the leaks, but entering an active zone, resetting your lock-on is a bit more interesting. That might do something. So I can think of a scenario where maybe you've got like one gen left to do and you kind of want to rush the generator, but you're not injured. So now you're risking the expose by staying in an active drone. But even then, you can just go and disable it, so it doesn't really matter. I don't know. I just don't think survivors are ever going to be locked on in a scenario that's detrimental to them once people learn how to play against her. So it might do something. I'm going to put a pin in that one, say it might actually do something. I'm saying realistically, though, I don't see it doing very much. The Skull Merchant now seeing the survivors lock on progress to better plan her chases. That's just a good quality of life change. I have no problems with that at all. That's just good. Besides locking on, the drones are also a powerful tool for tracking survivors, and the PTB found it to be a little difficult to fully take advantage of your eyes in the sky, so made some changes in the department. These were also leaked as well. The claw trap stays on for 45 seconds instead of 25. Well, it stays on forever until you take it off, but it's active for that time. If you walk inside the active range of a drone again, it would reactivate, and also if you had an active one, the drone would fly up in the sky, making it so you couldn't deactivate that anymore. And that was really the extent of the downsides to having a claw trap. I always thought that you should have, I don't know, Killer Instinct or make them oblivious or give aura reading or something, so there's more of a downside to having the claw trap on. But it's not that much of a, it's just not that much of a detriment to have it on. Yeah, she can take out the radar and slow herself down to 100 speed and try to like track you through walls and stuff. But it's just, if she didn't get slowed down at all while holding the thing, then maybe I could see, okay, that's useful. But and the fact that she gets slowed down in chase while using that makes it like even that part's not even that good. And I'm gonna go over something below this in a second that negates all this anyway. But she does move faster now. She used to move at regular survivor speed. Now she moves at hunter speed basically while checking a radar. I don't know why she's slowed down at all. Clown is not slowed down while holding his bottle, and it's a much more lethal tool. So I don't know why it's not the same. It's not consistent like that at all. Survivors don't get indicated when their location's being revealed by the Skull Merchant scanner. Most of the time when that's happening, it's because they have a claw trap on them, at which point you already know you're getting scanned because you have a beeping claw trap on you, so that Okay, I guess it doesn't really do anything, but all right, whatever. Um, and then they nerfed her. This is a killer so weak that all she needed was buffs and changes to not incentivize like boring gameplay styles and stuff like that. But then they actually somehow tacked a nerf on her by removing that one kind of downside of a claw trap being active where the thing would fly up into the air and you couldn't disable it. They removed that. Now it just stays on the ground, and also you can disable a drone while you have a claw trap on you. Um, it recharges your battery, but who gives a shit? It's like, who cares? It doesn't do anything. So they actually managed to sneak a nerf into one of the weakest killers I've ever seen, which is very perplexing. And survivors who fail a hack will now be immediately locked on, but I don't know how you fail a hack game, even a player with 5 minutes in the game. It's not even like a skill check where you need like, quick timing. You just press the buttons as they appear. It's just, I feel like a 90-year-old grandmother can do that. So I don't think we're going to see many failures of that. And even if they do, it's still probably not going to be capitalized on. So it looks like they're getting a lot of changes that might do something, but I'm trying to be practical and think of a real match. And I can't see most of these really doing much of anything. And they don't fix the whole core issue of her design, which is she's just boring. She's just going to just drop drones, get free hits, but then not have any way to capitalize on an injured survivor. That's going to be her whole thing. She's going to be bad, and she's going to be bad for the survivors to go against because she's just this one. You have one option in a chase, which is leave the loop unless you're injured, in which case stay at the loop because now there's no downside anymore. Woo, fun. They didn't address any of the things that make her unfun, and she's still going to be extremely weak. Now for the actual perks, couple of good changes, couple of weird changes. Eruption has been changed to be 10% of the total progress again instead of current progress. That's good. I think Eruption is no longer an embarrassingly bad perk anymore. I think it's actually kind of usable. So it's not really as much as Pain Resonance, but you can set up a bunch of gens to explode now. And then you also have the giant ore reading effect, which you could take, a benefit from. So I think Eruption is actually usable now. It's not overpowered. It doesn't have 25 seconds of incapacitate anymore. But the ore reading is nice, and it still has pretty sizable game delay now that can be applied to multiple gens when you set it up. So yeah, I think Eruption's pretty good. That's a decent change. I still would have done something a bit different, but I'm okay with that. I think that's fine. Thwack has had its activation timer removed. Basically, you had a limited time after the hook for it to be used. Now that timer is gone, but it doesn't change the fundamental problem with the perk in that typically when you're kicking pallets to get everyone to scream, you're already chasing a person. And having the person that you're chasing scream doesn't really do much. There are going to be some niche scenarios where you're in a chase kicking someone and you might find a person hiding nearby in 32 meters that is injured, and maybe that's a better chase. You can switch off to them, maybe. So it's situationally sometimes might have some use, but for the most part, I'd say 8 out of 10 times you use this, you're just going to be using Thwack and just seeing the guy you're already chasing, and it's not really going to do much. So they didn't fix that aspect of the perk. Background player was extremely problematic because it incentivized the killer to tunnel, because the guy who did the unhooking would just fuck off a mile away. So who else are you going to go for? Might as well go for the guy who's still next to you. So that was terrible design. And instead of reversing it, so it protected the unhooked guy, which would make sense. Now it is used when a killer picks up a survivor. This is like the weirdest change I've ever seen in my life. So what this perk does now is whenever a killer picks up a survivor, you get a speed burst, like sprint burst, for 4 seconds. And that's it. So I feel like unless you're just going for flashlight saves or something, or maybe you're trying to use like breakout and body block for the hook or something like that, that's probably the only 2 scenarios in the entire game I can think of this perk having some type of value. And in both of those scenarios, it's generally good for the killer because flashlights are extremely risky to use. I mean, you're not doing a gen, you're in the same spot, which could lead to snowballing for the killer. So I'm going to say this from a perspective of someone who's good at killer. This perk seems absolutely useless. Maybe for people that are less experienced and flashlights are more of a threat, I could see how this could be a bit more useful. But for the most part, this just sounds awful. I would never, ever use this as Survivor. Even if I was trying to get like flashlight saves and stuff, I still think I would rather just 99 a sprint burst and have something that doesn't activate just randomly. What if I'm on a generator across the map and like then the first guy gets downed or something like that? Or someone gets grabbed out of a locker and I can't prepare for any of that. I feel like 8 out of 10 times this perk is going to be used with you just sitting on a gen and you just get exhaustion for some reason. So it completely changed the identity of this perk. It's useful in like 2 scenarios and will be useless in basically every other scenario. But that's pretty much it. So overall, yeah. Eruption change, great. Thwack, nah. Background player, what? And then most of the killer changes don't do really anything to fix the main problems with the killer. Some of them are good quality of life, I will absolutely admit, and they might make her a tiny bit stronger, but then they also nerfed some aspects of her too. So I do think this is going to be one of the worst killers they've ever released, because it seems like this is what we're getting now when it comes out. It's going to need significant changes to be something that will be able to compete against even decent survivors. Like, I don't even know what I'm going to do, man. Like, I was playing the PTB and I was winning every game, but it's because PTB has like zero matchmaking and nobody knows what they're doing and people are testing stuff out. It's not really a good indicator of the strength. And also, all of the downs I got on the PTB had nothing to do with my power. They were just me doing killer fundamentals and moonwalking at tiles and stuff. Like, I didn't feel like I was just playing a killer without a power. It felt like most of the time. So yeah, I'm really not looking forward to this chapter at all, and I don't think this is going to do much to change a lot of people's opinions on that. But we'll see. Maybe there's. I'm not even going to huff the copium. I think we're fucked, but we'll see. Thanks for watching, guys. See ya.